What's up, you guys? Welcome to Walk the Line. We got a good one to talk about. UFC 311
Lock and Load
is set to take place on the 18th. Now, as I'm filming this, there's a bunch of wildfires going on in California. First and foremost, God be with everyone that's going through that stuff out there. Today, there's been some news that the fires have got pretty close to where the fights are taking place. I think they're about 20 miles away from the Intuit Arena. Okay, so hopefully these fights don't get affected, but most importantly, hopefully everyone's safe out there. I wanted to start the video off by saying that. But to the action, we got two title fights set to take place. Of course, the rematch between Islam Makhachev and Arman Tsarukyan. I'm very excited for this fight. I've been barking about this rematch for a long time. Ever since that young kid at just 22 years old took a short notice fight to make his UFC debut against a talent like Islam Makhachev. Even back then, Islam was very respected. Maybe you didn't have him as your pound for pound best in the game back then. Maybe you still don't. Maybe you have John Jones there, but he's definitely one or two, no matter how you spin it. And what a debut that was for Arman. That was one of the more competitive fights we've seen Islam in. And that's a fight that I've just wanted to see ever since, man. I just think the writing was on the wall back then that Arman was going to mature and eventually look to get redemption. So what a storyline going into that fight. Of course, we love the co-main event bout between Dvalishvili and Nurmagomedov. That's a great fight. Umar Nurmagomedov, one of the best talents we've ever seen work their way towards a title shot. When it's all said and done and Umar hangs his gloves up, he's a fighter that you're going to be reading a lot about in the history books, okay? And he's just easing into his prime here over the next couple of years. And I don't want to give you my prediction on that fight just yet, although a lot of you guys know how I think that fight's going to go. The whole card is stacked. How can we not mention the Jamal Hill versus Yuri Prochazka fight? That fight's going to be action-packed. Cannot wait to see Prochazka make his return. And the same can be said for Hill. I'm excited to see Hill step back in there after the way things went with him in his last fight. He's very hungry, and we've been hearing a lot about him outside the octagon. He's been looking for fights at the UFC Apex Center and all that, and he'll get his chance to really get in there and throw down with an absolute warrior in Prochazka. So Holland versus the Ritter, Beneil Dariush versus Renato Moicano. I mean, a lot of polarizing names. That's all just main card talk. The prelims are stacked up as well. I think we're going to see a lot of wild stuff taking place in the prelims. I mean, we got Johnny Walker taking on Bogdan Guskov. We'll probably see Johnny Walker getting knocked out in cartoonish fashion once again. Ailín Pérez will be shaking her butt in the cage. You got high-level prospects throwing down like Payton Talbott. Grant Dawson's taking on Diego Ferreira. And let me just mention, look, the first fight that's kicking this card off, the fight we're going to be talking about here in a second, is an extremely high-level matchup in the flyweight division of Tagir Ulanbekov and Clayton Carpenter. That's a fight that could be kicking off a main card of a pay-per-view event. I mean, this card is stacked up. I'm sure we missed a couple there that we could have talked about, but we're going to talk about every single fight right now, okay? You guys know how we do it here. We'll start with the first fight. We'll work our way up to the top. Please, guys, if you could, just hit that like button real quick before we jump into the first fight. It means a lot to me, guys. It really helps me be able to take this channel to the next level. If everybody hits that like button right now, it would be crazy. Imagine I check how many likes I get and actually is similar to the amount of views I get for this video. That's never the case, but if you guys can help me make that happen, I would be very grateful to you. Hit that subscribe if you're new to the channel. Go follow me on my social media. I got it scrolling below. Catch me on Instagram and Twitter, and I won't hold you up anymore. Let's go jump into the first fight.
The teller.
Kicking the card off in the flyweight division, we have the number 11th ranked Tagir Ulanbekov taking on the MMA lab product Clayton Carpenter. Now, Carpenter caught my eye a couple years ago on Dana White's Contender Series. He was able to get his hand raised against Edgar Chairez. That's a fighter that I do put some respect on. I think Chairez is an underrated fighter. Now, that fight didn't really go as planned from Carpenter's perspective. He ate a lot of damage on the feet, but he was able to showcase his toughness in that fight. And one thing that he really brings to the table is the pace that he will push, his toughness, and his wrestling, okay? And he also has some solid jiu-jitsu skills. When he gets the fight down to the mat, he can get to your back and he can finish the fight there. In fact, his last two fights, he did win via rear naked choke. We'll give him credit for showcasing that fight-ending ability in those two fights, but you have to note that the level of competition in those matches were pretty low. Okay, those fighters were nowhere near the level of a Tagir Ulanbekov. When you're talking about a Lucas Rocha and a Juan Camilo Renderos, okay, Juan Camilo was 4-1 going into that fight, making his UFC debut. I don't even know how he got that opportunity. Lucas Rocha is a fighter that seems to be fun to watch. He's a knockout artist. But even on DWCS, where he got the knockout and got the contract, he was taken down and controlled the entire first round. When we were breaking out tape on him going into that fight, when we saw his regional tape, he was constantly taken down prior to that. So he struggles there, and he kind of played into what Carpenter does well. So this is a different type of fight. When you're talking Tagir Ulanbekov, although he hasn't been very active throughout the years, hence the reason why he's only ranked 11th, I think that if he would have been active throughout these years more so, this is a fighter that could be in the mix to fight for the title. He's a dangerous fighter. He has his own issues. We'll talk about them here in a second, but the main thing he has going for himself right now is the fact that he has a lot of experience going into this fight. He has octagon experience. He trains heavily, and he surrounds himself with the greatest fighters in the game. We're talking Islam Makhachev. We're talking Umar Nurmagomedov, all those fighters. Okay, the fighters that are going to cap this card off, he surrounds himself with those types of dudes. Okay, so that's just a major advantage that he has going into this fight. Both fighters really haven't been that active either. Okay, I talk about him not being that active, but Carpenter had an injury after that the Ronda Rousey fight, so he was away for a while. He just came back a couple months ago, got that victory, but he's not a fighter that's been extremely active either. Now, this is how I see the fight going down. Okay, Ulanbekov, his striking has really sharpened up throughout the last couple of years, but he still does show to be a little bit vulnerable defensively. Even in his last victory over Cody Durden, we saw him tagged up a little bit. Even when he was landing his own damage, there was some returned on him. He kind of has these little mental lapses in there at times. If you shoot on him, like I do expect Carpenter to do, because he's constantly shooting in his fights, you may get Ulanbekov down for a second, but boy, does he have a beautiful butterfly guard. He'll flip you over, he'll reverse you there, and then he'll get on top of you. Okay, he's very well versed with his BJJ. He's talented all around. He's extremely well rounded, and I think that he's just going to give Carpenter some adversity that Carpenter has never seen before. And I just think that he's going to be a puzzle that Carpenter has never seen before. Yes, we've seen Carpenter push through adversity like we talked about in that Charez fight. Okay, but what did he do to push through that adversity? He continuously went to the takedowns and the wrestling. I don't know if he's going to have that opportunity here against Ulanbekov. I don't see him just taking Ulanbekov down and grinding him out throughout this fight. I think this will be a wild fight. So we'll see when the fight gets back up to the feet, how Carpenter fares there. Because when the fight's up there, I think Ulanbekov will be the fighter that gets the better of those striking exchanges. Now, Carpenter will have some opportunities to land as well. We've seen his boxing starting to develop. He has that Golden Gloves boxing style. He does hammer in the calf kicks, and that's something we've seen Ulanbekov eaten up with before. Durden had a lot of success chewing up his calves. But when it's all said and done, I'm a little bit more worried about Carpenter taking shots to the face than I am worried about Ulanbekov's calves. Okay, when the fight goes to the judges' scorecards, it looks better for Ulanbekov as he's tagging him up with the jab and whatnot. Maybe Carpenter can hit him with the big shot and shake things up. That's not out of the realm. Okay, I wouldn't say that. We've seen Ulanbekov get a little hectic in some of his fights. But all in all, I think Ulanbekov has the better striking. He has that reach advantage to go along with it. And I think that he'll actually show to be the better grappler overall. Okay, maybe you could say Carpenter has a better wrestling game. He has better entries, better takedowns. But when you mix it all together, Ulanbekov's a fighter that can take you down. He has beautiful judo throws, and his BJJ just flows beautifully down there. He's the more complete fighter. I wanted to kick this card off with picking a dog, which I will have some dogs coming your guys' way. I was close to it, but when it was all said and done, I do have to side with Tagir Ulanbekov getting the job done here. I'm going to say he wins a decision. I don't think that Ulanbekov's going to get him out of there. There's potential he could, but I think that Carpenter has sharp enough defense down in the mat to avoid being subbed. I think this is a high-level fight, but it does go to the judges' scorecards. Take a look at the line here. Ulanbekov is a minus 300, which we also saw. He opened up around a minus 255, so action has been coming in on him. I'm not in agreement with that. I'm quite surprised. I think people are overlooking Carpenter here. The value is on Carpenter, where his line's at plus 225 all day. I think Ulanbekov should be more like a minus 200 favorite. Okay, so you have an idea where I stand there. This is a fight that could play out very competitively. When you think back at the Tim Elliott versus Ulanbekov fight, yeah, Ulanbekov probably should have got his hand raised at the end of the day anyway, but that was a fight that played out competitively a couple of years ago. Carpenter is a fighter that's just 28 years old, and he hasn't been extremely active, but you can expect to see major strides in his game, okay? So some of the tape that we're watching on him, you know, he's 26 years old or so. As we see him now at 28, 29, you're going to see some major jumps in his game. And this is a fight that could play out a lot more competitively than this line is saying, in my opinion. So the value's on the dog, but I will say Ulanbekov wins a decision. Set to face off once again after their last fight fell through. We got Ricky Turcios taking on Benardo Sopaj. Now, Sopaj fell flat on his face in his UFC debut, where he was knocked out by Vinicius Oliveira, a fighter that's really proving to be another high-level prospect in this division. He just had a huge win over Ricky Simone. Now understand this, before the flying knee landed on Sopaj, Sopaj was ahead in that bout. Sopaj is rated as one of the top prospects coming up in the fight game. You see him rolling around with Khamzat Chimaev there. Yes, you're not mistaken. That is Khamzat that he's rolling around with, as he does train at All-Stars. Fighting out of Sweden, he is of Albanian descent. And this is a fighter that I do believe will put it together. He's had some hiccups. He's 11-3. Understand, though, he's just 24 years old. Some of these L's that he's taken, he was extremely young. We talked about the De Oliveira knockout loss there in his UFC debut. He got caught, and it was a learning experience for him. He'll be able to rebound from that. His body has a lot more mileage left on it. You take a look at some of the early losses he's taken. I mean, he was extremely young at the time of some of these fights. I think he was 17 for the Alexei Shaposhinikov fight, the Francesco Nuzzi fight. That was a fight that he lost via split decision over at Brave. He was very young at the time of that fight as well. And these are all just learning experiences for him. When you actually take a look at the way that he moves, he is a very talented kid, and there's a reason why he's getting the hype that he is. Even coming off the loss that he just had, he's still a huge favorite in this matchup against a veteran of the fight game, a former Ultimate Fighter winner, and Ricky Turcios, former Dana White's Contender Series alumni. He's been around the block for some time. He's not old either, right? When you take a look at Turcios, he's 31 years old. He's just entering his physical prime. Okay, he has the octagon experience. He has all these other things going for him. But when it's all said and done, you take a look at the tape, you look at the way these guys move, it's different. Okay, it's different. And you know why this is a great matchup for Sopaj? For the sheer fact that Turcios is not dangerous with his hands. I don't see Turcios getting a knockout here. He's had 3 knockouts out of his 16 professional fights. He's more of a volume fighter. He's a scrappy type of dude. I would say he's underrated as a whole as far as his well-roundedness. He can strike. He's very light on his feet, kind of has that karate style, if you will, and he does have jiu-jitsu skills. But I don't think he has the power to get Sopaj out of there, and I like Sopaj's technical abilities with his striking much more so. I think that he could use his wrestling and his grappling skills to get the better of Turcios there as well. And I like Sopaj to get that first ever UFC victory under his belt, and I expect to see him fighting in the UFC for quite some time. I think that he puts it together, and he will have a successful career. I like the people that he surrounds himself with, and when you watch the tape, it checks out. Now we take a look at the betting line. Sopaj opened up as a minus 300 over at BetUS. He's now a minus 400. Okay, he's a 4-1 favorite, coming off a brutal KO loss in his UFC debut. He's still very young. His record doesn't look that impressive. Okay, he's taking on the veteran. Like I said, though, take a look at the tape. Understand what you're really watching there. Sopaj's the better fighter. He will get his hand raised in this fight, in my opinion. Does he get Turcios out of there? That's a question we could talk about. Turcios has been finished in 2 of his 4 losses. Half the time he's been finished. He was knocked out once, subbed once. He's coming off of a fight where he was finished by another young, talented up-and-coming fighter in Raul Rosas Jr., right? He got caught in that rear naked choke. I do think that Sopaj has the ability to get him out of there. And I'm going to say that he does it. I'm going to say that Sopaj gets him out of there. And I think that it could be a knockout or a sub, but I think that he finds the finish. Okay, how about that? I'm going to say Turcios gets finished in back-to-back fights against these young, talented up-and-comers. Another one of those young fighters that have put Japan back on the map in the UFC. And Rinya Nakamura, he's taking on Muin Gafurov, fight taking place in the bantamweight division. Nakamura, first off, he has the base, okay? He's a former wrestling champ over there in Japan. And when you have that base, it goes a long way. We've seen major strides with his striking. Now, some of these other fighters that we've seen come in from Japan, like you think about Kai Asakura, his striking looks super dynamic and dangerous, but he doesn't have the grappling game to go with it. Nakamura has the potential to put it all together, because I'm pretty high on what I've seen from him as far as the striking goes, let alone the wrestling. We could talk about the wrestling later. I think he's a very technical striker fighting out of the southpaw stance. He gets that head kick up there quick. His boxing skills are sharp. Coming in officially to the UFC from the road to UFC, he looked phenomenal in that Kazama fight. If you guys remember that, he got the knockout over Toshiyumi Kazama. Kazama since bounced back with the victory in the octagon. Since that knockout victory for Nakamura, he goes out, defeats Fernie Garcia and Carlos Vera. So we're not talking about high-level fighters, but when you know what you're watching and you understand what he's doing in there, I mean, this is a high-level fighter at just 29 years old. He's going to start to put it all together as he cruises into his 30s. And this is a fighter that I think could be a threat to this division. I really do. At the very least, I think he'll represent Japan in a major way. You'll see a number next to his name. I think he will break into the top 15 eventually. Muin Gafurov, this is a fighter. If you remember him, he came into his Dana White's Contender Series debut as a big-time favorite over Chad Enhellinger. He came up short. He gassed out in that fight. He has decent experience in the fight game, even before that fight, right? He fought over in ONE FC, I believe it was, fighting the very dangerous and talented John Lineker, a fighter that should have never left the UFC, and went to a decision with him. And people do put respect on his name in Gafurov. I really don't see it. You take a look at the two losses there. The John Castaneda, that loss sticks out a little bit more to me. Said Nurmagomedov's a high-level fighter there, so it was what it was, but he got subbed in just over a minute, and he bounces back with the victory over Hyung Ho Kang. But again, just when you're watching the tape, these fighters are similar in some ways, as they're decently well-rounded. Like Gafurov has some wrestling abilities, and he's working on his striking, but it's just Nakamura is so much more pleasant to watch. He's so much more technical, so much faster, and so much more athletic. And I just see him being the better fighter anywhere this fight goes. That's the best way to describe this matchup. I think he's the better fighter anywhere this fight goes. And I think the real question is does he find that finish? Gafurov has only been finished once before. It was against Said, and that fight that we talked about there. Other than that, he typically goes through a decision. He can weather the storm and kind of battle through some adversity, even when he's not getting his hand raised. I think that Nakamura wins another decision here. There'll be 3 decisions in a row, and it won't be due to the fact that he's not looking for the finish or that this is a boring fight. I think it will play out entertainingly. I just think that it probably goes to the judges' scorecards. I'm going to say Nakamura wins via unanimous decision, changing levels, using his wrestling, outstriking him. And Nakamura to get the job done there. Let's take a look at the betting line. We'll head over to BetUS, where we see Nakamura is a minus 450 favorite. He's a big-time favorite, another big favorite here. Stick with me, though. We'll get to some lines that are a little closer, and we'll talk about some dog odds and all that here in a second. But I do want to take a look at the line movement. He opened up as a minus 450. It touched 350, and it's back to 450, okay? So some interesting line movement. I expect it to stay right around that 450 line. Maybe he settles in even as a minus 500, a 5-1 favorite. People respect his game, and they know what they're looking at there. And he's a big favorite. Should you be mixing that in a parlay? I wouldn't be that opposed to that if you felt strongly about it. Maybe you mix them into a two-team parlay, try to put a little bit cash in your pocket, try to chip up there and use that money on some closer odds and some better value type of fights. But I do think that Nakamura gets the job done. I feel pretty confident in it. There she is, your girl, Ailín Pérez, going to be clapping that thing in the octagon on the night. She's taking on Carol, Rosa. This is ranked action here, guys, okay? This is some action taking place in the very rare women's bantamweight division. Ailín Pérez, I believe, we'll see. I think people are going to start to put a little bit more respect on her fighting ability. We know that she's kind of a polarizing figure outside of just fighting, but I think people are starting to catch on that her skill set's really growing. Okay, she had a submission victory in her last fight in the first round, pulled off that arm triangle choke over Zelenikova. That was the fight where she subbed her and then started clapping the cheeks in her face. I'm really hoping we see something similar here. Okay, but on a more serious note, which I don't know why I said that, because I am serious about that, but her jiu-jitsu game is developing. Her striking is developing. It's a little raw, but one thing that Pérez brings to the cage and brings to the fight game is I think that she's a natural fighter. I really do believe that. When you break down tape on her and some of her early regional fights that she had when she turned pro, you can tell she's a fighter. I bet you she got in some fights outside of the cage. This is a girl that's probably she probably was chasing her boyfriend around the bar, whooping girls up, grabbing them by the hair, dragging them across tables. I think that's the cloth that she's cut from. Okay. And I like some of her athletic abilities. All right. She's a quick twitch mover in there. Well, on the other hand, Carol Rosa, in my opinion, is a fighter that may be more technically sound, a little bit more of a proven fighter. She has the advantage with more UFC fights and all that, but she's a little slow in there at times. And we saw that catch up with her in the Irene Aldana fight where she was outstruck quite a bit. She was outstruck in that fight 204 to 145. And Aldana, yes, you can say she packs more of a punch than Pérez does. At least she's proven to do so thus far. But Aldana is similar in the fact that she's just she lets it flow. She's like a natural fighter. She'll start to let that volume go. And we saw her be able to use that to get the job done against Rosa. And I'm wondering, and I'm thinking that Pérez may be able to do some of that on the feet. Also, just note this real quick. Pérez is 11-2. One of those knockout losses was actually a DQ, and that was a fight where I think it was against Vidal, the former UFC fighter. I'm not sure if she's still on the roster, but that was a fight where she was whooping her up. I think she hit her with some illegal knees and whatnot, and she was using that wild street fight type of striking, and she got DQ'd there. That was a fight she was en route to winning. The only time we've seen Pérez legitimately lose is in her UFC debut, I believe it was, where she got caught in that armbar against the judokian Stephanie Egger. And yes, that's correct there. So since then, she's on a 4-fight winning streak, fighting lower level talent. That's a little bit of an issue here when you're trying to say how this fight's going to go. Pérez isn't as proven against higher level fighters. We've seen Rosa in there with some respectable talent. We've seen her come up short in some of those fights too. I understand why I've seen some of you guys on the Rosa side. She's a little bit more proven, but I think you guys know where I'm going with this, man. I'm taking my girl Pérez. I really do believe she has the ability to get her hand raised here. And the fact that she's as much of a dog as she is makes me want to side with her even more so. Okay, she opened up as a plus 150 on BetUS. She's now a plus 155. I think this is a fight that should be a little closer than that at the very least. And like I said, I think Pérez gets the job done. But yeah, I wouldn't be shocked if Rosa can dull the fight down a little bit and just be a little bit more technical with her striking, or if they go down to the mat, maybe be more technical with her BJJ. But I'll tell you what, man, Pérez is underrated with her body locks and her judo throws and her jiu-jitsu. It's really all starting to come around, and she has that nastiness in her, okay? She has that nastiness in her, which could also look good for the judges' scorecards. And maybe I would love to see her get on top of Rosa. One thing that she hasn't really been able to do too much in the UFC, she's done it a little bit, but when she's able to get on top of a girl down in the mat, she rains down some heavy shots down there. Okay, she'll start doing that cat fight type of style, man. She'll start whooping you up down there, and I would love to see her kind of mount or flatten Karol Rosa out. If not Rosa, hopefully down the line we get to see more of that from her because she's wild with that. And I will pick the dog, Ailín Pérez, who's a plus 155 dog, to get the job done here. I'm going to say she wins a decision. The soon-to-be 40-year-old Diego Ferreira brings in some serious momentum to his bout here with Grant Dawson. If you guys remember, he was a plus 310 underdog in that last fight with Mateusz Rebecki. Now, I'm so happy he won that fight because I was eventually able to get Rebecki as a plus 250 against Miktabek Orolbey, which that line made absolutely no sense to me. Everyone completely turned their back on Rebecki, forgetting that he was basically dominating that fight before kind of breaking down late in it. We do have to tip our hat to Diego Ferreira. I mean, this is a longtime UFC veteran, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt who's very well versed down in the mat, but also has shown to develop his striking throughout the years. And this is a fighter that's 19-5 as a pro. You take a look at his resume. I mean, he's only losing to very high-level fighters. We're talking about fighters like Mateusz Gamrot, Gregor Gillespie, Beneil Dariush, Dustin Poirier, and, of course, Beneil Dariush as well the first time, right? 2 losses against Dariush. I mean, he doesn't lose to slouches in there. Okay, so Grant Dawson better bring his A game because even though Ferreira is creeping up on 40 years old, he doesn't seem to be slowing down. I do put some serious stock into the fact that Dawson is just 30 years old. I mean, we haven't even seen the best from him thus far. He's a fighter that's always very respected when you take a look at the betting lines next to his name. But what's interesting to me is, although he's 22-2, when you actually dissect his resume, it's not as impressive as you would think that it would be, okay? Comes into this fight on a 2-fight winning streak against Joe Selecki and Rafa Garcia. Before that, he was knocked out by Bobby Green in the first round. You guys remember that one. That was a strange one. That eventually led him to blocking the teller. He did block me in IG. I guess he didn't like what I was talking about because, I don't know, that fight just seemed a little weird to me. But, the decision victory that he had over Damir Ismagulov, in my opinion, is probably his best victory as a pro. I thought that was very impressive, the way he went out there and dominated with the grappling. I mean, besides that, though, went to a draw with Ricky Glenn, and he was 10-8 in that fight. There's not a lot of big names here to talk about. I mean, I don't know how much respect you guys still put next to Jared Gordon's name. The Leonardo Santos fight, Santos was very much up there in age as well at the time, and Santos was en route to winning that fight, essentially before Dawson caught the knockout with just 1 second left to go in the fight. There's just not a lot of big names here, man. But at the end of the day, I do understand why there's a lot of respect on Dawson's name, and it's the fact that when he's hitting on all cylinders, you could see it, man. His wrestling's serious. He has great cardio. At times, he shows flashes of his striking developing, and the fact that I'm going to lean towards Dawson's way here, it really has a lot to do with the different points that these fighters are at in their career. I know Diego Ferreira's coming in with all this momentum after that finish, but let's not forget that he was losing the vast majority of that fight, and he's still getting up there at age. A big thing that Dawson has going for him in this matchup is I think that he can keep the pace going throughout the fight. I don't think that he'll gas out and give Ferreira an opportunity to break him down later on, kind of like he did against Rebecki. I think that Dawson can go and go and go and work his way to that decision victory as the fight goes 15 minutes. I will say this, though. As Dawson looks to get these takedowns, which I definitely feel that he'll get some of those, he'll solidify some of those takedowns. Ferreira is not easy to keep down on the mat. I think that Ferreira will work up to his feet at times, and he'll try to inflict some damage, and we could see Dawson in some trouble there. I just think that Dawson's going to push through that, weather through that, and get more and more takedowns, and we may even see him have a significant amount of control time. Maybe he takes it back. I don't think that he finds the finish. I think that Ferreira is just, he's a little too technically sound there. I don't see him getting submitted, but I do feel that Dawson can control this fight and work his way to a decision victory. Okay, so I do have Dawson winning the fight, but you take a look at the betting odds. Ferreira is now a plus 245 on BetUS. He opened up as a plus 225, so the line's creeping up and up. Maybe by the time this fight takes place, Ferreira could be as high as a plus 280, plus 290. Maybe he creeps up to that plus 300 range. You definitely could be talking about some solid dog value. Okay, even where the line stands right now, I think that the dog value is on Ferreira. He's going to be very motivated, and he's going to be feeling himself, again, coming off that victory. I'm going to bring it up one more time. Coming off that victory, he's going to be feeling himself here. He's not going to be feeling like a fighter that's about to be 40. I think he's kind of tricking himself after that performance, and he's going to be feeling like he's coming in and looking to work his way into a title run. So I wouldn't be shocked if the fight plays out closer than the line says, especially with Dawson having those types of performances consistently through his career. Okay, the Ricky Glenn fight, the Leonardo Santos fight, he doesn't always live up to his odds, and I'm not willing to say that the value is on his line where it's at, as high as it is. So give me him to win via decision, but the value's on the dog all day. You know, when Zachary Reese made his UFC debut against Cody Brundage, and Cody Brundage picked him up and slammed him on his head, Rampage Arona style. And what was so crazy, because it happened in back-to-back fights too, with Jakar Close also slamming Joe Selecki on his head in that fashion. I mean, those types of finishes are so rare to happen once in an event or within a month or year span. Forget about back-to-back fights. It was absolutely absurd. And I know I just brought that up recently when we were talking about Selecki's upcoming past fight that just took place, but I'll bring up that scenario every time I get an opportunity. But the point I'm making, I was so disappointed that happened to Reese, because I believe Reese is a fighter that has some serious potential in this division, and not just potential to make a run in it and get a number next to his name and all that, but I think he has potential to be one of the bigger fan favorite type of fighters. I mean, this is a fighter that really brings it. Okay, you see it instantly. You watch any tape on him, this is a fighter that brings it. He looks to get the opposition out of there in one way or another, and he's kind of diverse with his attack, and also brings in some real physical traits. He had a phenomenal finish on Dana White's Contender Series against Eli Aronov. We talked about the Brundage loss. I mean, but look at the way he bounced back in the two fights after the Brundage loss. I was very pleased to see what we saw after that. He went out there, knocked out Julian Marquez in brutal fashion within 20 seconds, and then he went out there and made Jose Medina a punching bag, which is what Medina does best. No disrespect to Medina, but I think, as I do believe he's off the UFC roster, he should look into opening some type of human punching bag business. I think it's pretty cool. I mean, that dude, he can take the damage like no other. And but we saw Reese was just a step ahead in that fight. We saw the reason why when he was on the regional scene, nobody would sign to fight him. Okay, he only has 9 professional fights. He's 30 years old. If you don't know the story, he struggled to get fights in the regional scene for years. Nobody wanted to step in there with him, and there's a reason for that. Okay, I mean, this dude is very physically imposing, and he has a diverse skill set to go with that. So, I mean, listen, Dumas, you guys know the deal with Dumas, man. This is a fighter that's very up and down. He's a raw fighter. Although now he has 12 professional fights under his belt, more than Reese does, and he's starting to get his feet wet in the octagon. But I still say he's a little bit of a raw talent, and there's some work to be done there. Dumas is vulnerable to being finished. When he loses his fights, he gets finished. Okay, and the one that really stands out to me was the Nursultan Rozaboyev knockout loss, because Rozaboyev is similar to Reese in some ways, as they're very long and rangy and scrappy and wild in there, and they'll look to land that shot on you. And we saw Dumas get caught in that fight, and I see something similar happening here. You also remember when Josh Fremd submitted him. If Reese wants to look for a sub, I think he can find that as well. I think Zachary Reese gets the first round finish in this fight, I think that's something we'll be saying very often in regards to Zachary Reese getting the job done. He'll get it done in the first round, but I won't say that he's going to be immune to taking his loss here and there. As aggressive as he is, there's going to be situations where he's going to run into something and he's going to get finished in his own right. But his type of fighting style will lead to him getting many opportunities to fight in the UFC. He won't be a fighter that gets cut. He could lose 3-4 in a row and he's not going to get cut. He has that type of fighting style. So I wouldn't be shocked if Dumas can catch him with something as he's coming in. Dumas is somewhat technical. He's a good athlete. Maybe he catches him with something. And Dumas has also shown to be pretty diverse with his finishing ability, even from when he got the job done in Dana White's Contender Series. He was a big underdog and he submitted that fighter there. And a fighter, and I'll just mention him real quick because he's a fighter that people actually had high hopes for, and Mateusz Penaz, and he submitted them there in the first round. And Penaz has since went on to win 3 fights in a row, and he will be fighting David Zawada coming up, just to shed some light on that. Maybe we see him in the UFC down the line. But we've seen Dumas pull the upset off before, and we take a look at the betting line here. Zach Reese is a -270. Opened up as a -270. He's now -260 on BetUS. And that's a little steep in the sense that when you're backing Reese, if you were to throw him in a 2-team parlay or something like that, if you're just taking him on the money line, it's a little steep in the sense that he's not going to go out there and be safe with your money. He's going out there to put on a show and to deliver and to find that finish. So he may run into something. That line's a little steep in that sense. I think we're going to want to talk about this fight more so when we do the specific method of victory, the prop edition video. We may talk about this because this is a fight where I do see an early finish happening, more on the Reese side, but maybe even on the other side. I want to talk about this fight in that video. We got some ranked heavyweight action set to take place here. Number 6 versus number 7. And I'm sorry to get you guys all excited and then let you down by telling you the fight is Jailton Almeida versus Serghei Spivac. And yes, the bulk of responsibility of this fight not being as exciting as the majority of heavyweight fights in the top 10 is because Jailton Almeida is in it. And he's a boring fighter, man. He's a boring fighter, but I will be clear. He's very good at what he does best with his grappling. Okay. He's very good at that. We capitalized tailing him once again. We didn't look away from him after what he did to us in that Curtis Blades spot where he let us down there. I did have some action on him against Alexander Romanov, came through for us there. That was a nice stylistic matchup for him. We know what he's going to go out there and look to do. He's going to look to take you down and dominate and control you with his jiu-jitsu down on the mat. And he's not necessarily going to look to rain down a bunch of damage on you and get you out of there. He's not going to really shine on the feet with his striking. Okay, he's going to look to grapple you there. Now, Serghei Spivac is coming off a great bounce-back victory over Tybura, and a bounce-back victory in a multitude of ways, right? It was a bounce-back victory because he was coming in off a very disappointing performance against Cyril Gane. It was also a big bounce-back victory because that was a rematch, all right? He lost that first fight that he had with Marcin Tybura, and that's a very important fight, okay? You need to run the tape back on that fight because although he did pull the armbar off on Tybura did get him down to the mat rapidly in that fight once again, and I don't know if he's pulling off an armbar against Almeida. I think Almeida is a little bit too technically sound there. Almeida's never been subbed as a pro, and I think that Almeida is going to have similar success with those takedowns. Okay, in that first fight against Tybura controlled Spivac down on the mat for almost 9 minutes, almost 2 full rounds of control time there. I think Almeida can replicate a lot of that in this fight. There are some X factors going into it. I mean, Serghei Spivac is still a young fighter, especially for the heavyweight division, so we could see some growth from him there. He's going to need to stuff takedowns. He's going to need to work his way back up to his feet if he's taken down. There is potential that could happen because when this fight is standing, Almeida has shown to be vulnerable there. Okay, his striking is just very low level, and he doesn't like to get hit. He does not like to get hit. We saw that in the Curtis Blades bout. As soon as Curtis stuffed that takedown and started dropping down those shots, although, yes, those were big shots from a big heavyweight, I strongly feel that Almeida was looking for a way out to an extent there. So if Spivac can put himself in a position where he could land some damage on Almeida, he could potentially get him out of there. And I don't want to completely overlook his submission ability. He does have 7 submission victories out of his 17. The majority of his wins do come by way of submission, so he knows what he's doing there. I just feel that Almeida will be able to avoid the sub. He's very technically sound. His BJJ is his base, and he's good at it. We'll take a look at the betting line here. Almeida opened up on BetUS as a -300. He's now -350. Action coming in on him. Although he does have that one hole in his game where he doesn't like to be hit. I will also praise him, though, for being a fighter that is pretty safe to back at times. Okay, he knows what he needs to do to get the job done. He knows what he needs to do to get his hand raised, so he's not going to let you down there. He's going to look to get this fight down to the mat and try to control it and have you relaxing on the couch while he's in a dominant position. He's not going to search and fish for wild finishes and put himself in a position where he's reversed and stuff like that. He plays it very safe. Okay, so that line's still a little bit too high for my liking at minus 350. I would say the value's on the dog in that spot. It's just a little too steep with some of the variables we talked about with Spivac being young and having momentum coming into this fight. And if he stuffs takedowns, he gets the better of the striking most likely. If there's a type of situation where we see big damage being unraveled, it's Spivac landing on Almeida. In the bantamweight division, we have one of the rising stars of the fight game in Payton Talbott. He's taken on the 11-year-older Raoni Barcelos. He's at 37, man, Barcelos. He's still putting the gloves on, and he's looking to take on a young gun like Talbott here, man. This is going to be an uphill battle for him. I will say this. One thing we haven't really seen from Talbott thus far is we haven't seen him tested against a high-level wrestler or grappler, okay? Yanis Gimori is not that. Cameron Simon, who's a very talented young up-and-coming fighter as well, is not that. He's well-rounded decently, but I would say the striking is what Cameron does best. Nick Aguirre, more of a BJJ type of player and a fighter that's really not on the level. Reyes Cortez, I guess you can argue that he has somewhat of a wrestling background, but a lower-level fighter, in my opinion. So, I mean, we haven't seen him tested against a fighter like Barcelos, who Barcelos is a former Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu wrestling champ. Okay, not a lot of people realize that about him. I mean, his striking has always shined throughout the years. He has excellent BJJ. When he was in his prime, I mean, his back take was ridiculous. The speed he used to display with those back takes and some of those transitions, it kind of reminded me of Renan Barão. If you guys remember Renan Barão back when he was in his prime. I mean, these dudes were moving differently in there. Barcelos really had a tough fall, but when you think about it, man, this was a fighter that was like known to be the dark horse of this division. He was getting all this momentum going. He still was in, if you will, his prime years. I mean, he had a lot more to offer when you looked at the age that he was at the time. And then he just fell off a cliff. He took that L to Timur Valiev. The Victor Henry fight was really his downfall. That was a fight where he was a massive favorite. Okay, I forget the exact line. He may have been like a minus 900, a minus 1,000. He was a huge favorite. Victor Henry came in, may have taken that fight on short notice in his UFC debut and pulled off the upset. Okay, that was a really tough look. He did bounce back with the victory over Trevin Jones, but he gets brutally knocked out against Umar Nurmagomedov, who we'll be talking about here in a little bit. And that was the first time Barcelos has ever been knocked out. But that was such a damaging KO that we're going to be talking about it here in a second, some more. Lost to Kyler Phillips, who Phillips has had some ups and downs as of recently. Doesn't look the best losing to Kyler, even though I like Kyler. Did bounce back with a victory over Christian Quinones. Quinones is not on the level. Now that knockout loss that he took against Nurmagomedov, he took some serious damage. He's up there in age, and now he's going to have the limbs of Payton Talbott flying by his face left and right. And I think that Talbott's very live to get the knockout in this fight. I mean, that's what he does. He's coming into this fight off a phenomenal KO. The way Talbott moves in there, it's really something else, okay? And even though we talked about him being tested here against a higher level grappler and wrestler, do note that Talbott was a high school wrestler. He also played football in high school. I mean, he's a real athlete, but he also has a little bit of a wrestling background. And I just think that he's going to check those boxes off when he faces those fighters that look to use those types of tactics on him. I think he's going to stuff takedowns, or at the very least, he's going to work his way back up to his feet consistently, like he's even shown early on in his career. You take a look at some of his earlier fights on the regional scene. Yeah, he's been taken down at times, but he always pushes through and works his way back up to his feet and stuffs takedowns later in fights. He kind of gets his rhythm going and momentum going as the fight goes. And I just see him working his way back up and eventually finding a KO. One thing I also will say, earlier on in his career, he did have a little bit of a track record of getting hit with shots against lower level fighters because he was so aggressive. He'd march forward, and I would say fundamentally he was a little bit out of place at times. And we've seen him eat some big shots, but he shows to have the X factor there too. He marches right through that type of adversity. He'll eat a shot and he'll march forward, and he will look to land his knockout on you. And that's what he's doing for the most part when he's getting the job done. He's 9-0. 7 of those victories have come by way of KO. I think he gets another knockout here. I think he does just fine defending any type of a takedowns that Barcelos throws his way. And Barcelos is a fighter that, even though he used to be a very quick and technical striker, we've seen a clear decline in that aspect of his game. We really have seen it, man. If you're really breaking down the tape and you're dissecting it, I was just looking at some of his recent fights. You see him just so much more hesitant than he used to be. There's just like that little millisecond of delay that he used to not have. And in the fight game, that's a huge difference. And that's the difference of him being out of position or just not being in a good spot to defend himself and getting tagged with something nasty from Talbott. And who knows what it's going to be. It could be a head kick. It could be a backflip KO, because Talbott's going to be that type of fighter that really unravels a lot of wild finishes. So I do have Talbott winning this fight. I think it's going to be another very exciting one. And take a look at the betting line here. On BetUS, Talbott opened up as a minus 1,025. He's now a minus 1,400 favorite. Okay, you look on BetUS, you go over to the website, say you want to lock this in. I'm not really recommending you do that. That line's way too high to play with. Maybe we could talk about this fight a little bit more in the prop edition video, but he's at minus 1,400, on BetUS. It's a crazy line. And there's a reason why that line's like that, I guess, to an extent. But once you start getting up to that level, though, with the fighter that shows all these intangibles and potential, you still got to caution yourself when you got a crafty veteran like Barcelos there with a plus 700 line next to his name. If I'm forced to choose, there's no question that the value is on the dog. I mean, when you really need an answer from me there, the value's on a plus 700 line next to Barcelos' name. But give me Talbott to land a brutal second-round KO. We got the fan favorite, Johnny Walker, looking to get his hand raised in the octagon once again. It's been quite some time. He's taking on Bogdan Guskov, a fighter that's quickly made a name for himself in the octagon. We'll talk a little bit more about him in a second. But Johnny Walker, he's coming off a brutal knockout loss to Volkan Ozdemir. Got hit with a nasty uppercut that took place about 6 months ago. Before that, he gets knocked out by Magomed Ankalaev. Ankalaev settles the score quickly after the first time there was some controversy. For those of us that really knew what we were watching that first fight, we knew how that fight was going to play out before the illegal knees and however you want to describe that situation. But Johnny Walker has been struggling with getting knocked out. And he doesn't just get knocked out, man. He gets knocked out in cartoon fashion. Of course, Jamal Hill finished him up in the first round. Corey Anderson knocked him out in the first round back in the day. And this isn't something that just came out of nowhere, because even early on when he turned pro, he got knocked out within 18 seconds. Johnny Walker is a threat to knock you out, but he's very long-limbed and he does suffer from giraffe syndrome, even though he's a phenomenal athlete. So his giraffe syndrome is a little different than most when we're talking about that, but he's very long-limbed and he is technically flawed defensively, and he's there to be hit. And Bogdan Guskov is a more technical and compact type of fighter, and I think it's very likely we see Guskov land a KO. That's really all Guskov does. Okay, 16 victories, 13 of them have come by way of KO. Okay, before he got signed to the UFC, he was knocking everybody out. You want to talk about a highlight reel? Go to YouTube and search his highlight reel of all his fights before he even got the UFC contract. I mean, he was just knocking out everybody. You can argue that the level of competition was lower. There's no question about that. But when you see him on tape, even in those earlier fights, you understand that there's something there. This is a fighter that had legitimate potential. Hence the reason why I've sided with him in every single one of his 3 UFC fights. Obviously, I was wrong with the Ozdemir fight, but I've sided with him in all 3, and he's proved me right in the last 2. I mean, he's living up to the potential. He's a dangerous fighter. He surrounds himself with good people, high-level fighters. He trains with them, and this is a legitimate top 15 light heavyweight fighter right now, and I think it's very likely he's going to knock Johnny Walker out. I really see that being the case. Now, that being said, Johnny Walker is live to knock anybody out himself, okay? He is. If he's able to land that one shot on you before you can get him, he can put you out of there. Even when you think about the Magomed Ankalaev fight before he ended up losing it, I mean, look at the flying knee that he threw in there that just missed Magomed. I mean, he throws dynamite towards the opposition, and if it lands, it will explode on you. And, I don't want to just completely gloss over some of the work that he's put in. I mean, knocked out Ryan Spann back in 2020 when he kicked his UFC career off coming from Dana White's Contender Series, goes in there, knocks out Khalil Roundtree, Justin Ledet, and Misha Serkinov all in the first round. The Khalil Roundtree one was nasty. If you remember, he was landing those elbows in the clinch. I mean, he'll look to land all types of wild stuff on you. And I just want to make sure I highlight that he is dangerous, and I would not be shocked if he landed a KO on Guskov. I wouldn't be shocked if he knocked out anybody. On the right night, I mean, there could be slim chances against higher level fighters, but I wouldn't be shocked because he's going to throw that type of stuff out there. It could land. But I feel that this fight is going to go the way of Bogdan Guskov being more technically sound and eventually setting up something heavy with his hands. And he's going to knock Johnny Walker out again. And you're going to see that Looney Tune, cartoonish type of knockout from Walker. He's going to be flopping around, doing the worm, making faces as he goes out. And give me Guskov to get I'm going to say Guskov gets the first round KO. Could be first or beginning of second, but an early KO in this fight. I'll say first round if you guys want a clear answer there. I think Guskov gets that knockout. And we'll take a look at the betting line where we will see Guskov is a minus 165 favorite. There's been very minimal line movement here. I think he opened up as a minus 160 on BetUS. He's now minus 165. And I like the value on Guskov. I think where that line is, we talked about the threat that Walker could be, but I still don't think that there's value on the plus 135 line. I think it's more likely that Guskov goes out there and handles business one way or another. He could win a decision as well. And I have this fight capped more with Guskov being like around a minus 200 favorite. So I think there's some value on that line. Give me Bogdan Guskov to get that early KO. Hey guys, real quick, just want to put this out there. If anybody wants to work with me for my official plays, which by the way, we are in an absolute tear. Don't forget the work we were doing the last 6 months of 2024. Okay. Taking that right into 2025. I'm on a heater. I would love for you guys to reach out to me and to hit these winners with me. Okay. If you guys want any further information on working with me, reach out to me through email or DM me on Instagram or Twitter, and I will give you that information. Here he is, my old arch nemesis, Kevin Holland. He's big time in me now, right? He's in the commercials trying to push that cheap tequila. He's making rap videos, and he's a household name in the UFC. And obviously, I'll tip my hat to Kevin Holland. We had our fun back in the day. He was calling me out to come to his gym so he could put a whooping on me. And, I had some fun with it. And I think he ended up taking it a little bit too personal and he blocked me. But, I always have fun breaking down a Holland fight. And I like this matchup a lot. You guys know I'm a big fan of RDR. I've been talking about him for a long time, even before he finally made it to the UFC. He had a phenomenal UFC debut, in my opinion. I love the fact that he stuck to the game plan and he eventually gets the sub in the third round over Gerald Meerschaert, who is one of the kingpins as far as pulling off subs in the UFC, whether you want to admit it or not. I mean, he's a phenomenal grappler and he pulled the sub off on Meerschaert. I thought that was impressive there. We understand that RDR is a limited fighter. His striking is not on that level. Okay, Holland will have the advantage while this fight's on the feet, and I think that Holland very well can knock him out. He's been in there with much larger and more dangerous opponents, fighters that were probably on some type of substances. When you think about Anatoly Malakin, that's a fighter that's carrying gold over there and won. And you take a look at the size of him compared to a Kevin Holland. I mean, RDR's been in there with much larger physical specimens, but Kevin Holland's still a very lengthy fighter too. He brings in his own intangibles. He has an 81-inch wingspan. He's going to have a 5-inch reach advantage here. I think it is possible that Holland can get the knockout here. Okay, he's diverse with his striking as well. He can land some wild stuff on you, and RDR he's just a little clunky and awkward there. But I will tell you what, I feel this fight will go down to the mat. If not once, I feel this is a fight that could go down to the mat multiple times. And Kevin Holland has his own jiu-jitsu skills, right? He's a Travis Lutter. I think he may be a Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belt. Hopefully I'm not just giving him that credit without him pulling that off. But I know he's a high level and an underrated BJJ player under Travis Lutter, who Travis Lutter, if you guys don't know about Lutter, a fighter that had his own accomplishments back in the day in the UFC, came up short fighting for the belt against Anderson Silva. And he was all drawn out for that fight. It was a brutal weight cut for him. But still, I do understand that Holland has grappling skills. And I don't want to completely overlook him there. But I think that I think the Ritter is going to get the sub in this fight. I do. He continuously does it. He's high level there. And we've seen Holland sub before. Chimaev recently pulled off the sub on him. And he's kind of has been flaking out in some of his fights. Sometimes it seems like he's not mentally there. And the Ritter, to me, seems like a fighter that's a man on a mission right now. So that's a big thing that I want to bring up. I think the Ritter is mentally locked in, while Holland has a lot of distractions going on. I think he has money coming at him in a variety of ways. I know he likes to hunt and all that. And I think that this is a fight where this isn't a matchup where Holland's going out there and fighting a Tim Means or an Alex Oliveira, stuff like that, even though he lost the first round to a low-level Alex Oliveira. And there's been a lot of ups and downs with what Holland's doing in the cage. And I faded him in his last fight. You guys know I got Roman Dolidze at dog odds. That was a huge card for me. And I'll fade him here. Not saying it's an official play. You guys will see if it is or not. But I do like De Ridder to get the job done in this fight. And De Ridder is going to be the dog. And I want to take a look at the line movement that we're seeing. He is currently a plus 115. He opened up as a plus 110. He was a plus 120 very recently, but he's the dog. Okay, he's the dog here. And I think the value is on the dog. A little bit limited with his striking, but he knows what he needs to do to win fights. He's been doing it for quite some time, right? He was the former double champ over at ONE, and I don't know, put as much merit as you want into that. I know ONE has really been kind of looked at like a major step down from the UFC these days. They don't really have too much momentum going, and I still say De Ridder gets the job done here, and I'm going to say he pulls off a submission. Boy, am I excited for this one. We got the number 9th ranked lightweight fighter, Beneil Dariush, who's on a 2-fight losing skid. Okay, he's hungry for a win. And then you got Renato Moicano, who's ranked number 10, comes into this fight on quite a winning streak. He has a lot of momentum behind him. He's winning these fights. He's grabbing the mic. He's going crazy on it. And smart move by Renato. You guys know that I feel all these fighters should really look to be more vocal, and it will correlate to more money in their pockets and all that. So I've been preaching that forever. So, I mean, I'll tip the hat to Renato for doing what he should be doing. Now, I will say this. I've been looking to fade Moicano for quite some time, and I've been fading him for a while, so sometimes it's came through for me, but as of recently, he's been getting me. But I feel that he's been getting away with murder, okay? When you actually dissect his little winning streak that he has going on here, okay, I mean, he was able to get those takedowns against Dober. I'll give him credit there. We'll give him a legitimate victory. But the Jailton Turner finish there, that was such a weird one, man. Turner had him hurt so bad in that first round. He sits there, and he looks at him, and he lets him get up. It was ridiculous. That was a fight he could have possibly finished. Turner completely flakes out and gasses and just, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. The BSD fight, BSD getting reckless, making mistakes in there. Just had a little bit of a slow start, gets that eye injury. I would back BSD to win that fight 100 out of 100 times. And I think if they fought 100 times, I would say BSD would win that fight somewhere up in the 90. That's how I truly feel. I mean, so he's gotten away with murder a little bit. Brad Riddell, a fighter that was dabbling with retirement mentally when they had their fight and all that. So I just think that the stock, the respect and where Moicano's stock is right now, it's a little bit inflated. And I think that Dariush is the perfect fighter to kind of expose that. Dariush is a very high level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Good luck. And good luck for Moicano just to go out there and stifle and hold him down like he did against Drew Dober. Okay, I don't really see that being the case. Dariush is high level there. Dariush welcomes wild fights. He'll make this fight play out to be a war. And we've seen Moicano kind of come up short in some of those types of fights. You think about when he had this big opportunity against Jose Aldo back in the day. I mean, you can land on him and you can hurt him. Now, Dariush isn't the most technical striker, but don't overlook some of his performances that he's had there. Okay, he's a well-rounded fighter. He's more well-rounded than he's given credit for. Okay, had a big time victory over Mateusz Gamrot, where I know he used his grappling more so. But I mean, the Jakar close KO was a crazy one. They went to war back and forth. He eventually gets that KO there. Submitted Dober as well. Victory over Thiago Moises. Yes, we've seen him brutally KO'd as well back in the day. Barbosa and Hernandez landed big shots on him. I don't see Moicano landing that one shot type of KO. He's more of a technical boxer and looks to set up his jiu-jitsu skills. I think this is a good match for Beneil Dariush. I really do. And also note, let me just highlight, comes in on a 2-fight losing skid where he was knocked out in the first round. It was against Charles Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan. Okay, you're talking about the cream of the crop. Renato Moicano is not that, in my opinion. And I think that Dariush can weather the storm and he's not going to be exploited down in the mat, which Moicano likes to do. And I think Dariush can actually be the fighter that lands some big strikes. And if we actually see someone have success with the grappling, I'm going to say it's Dariush that maybe could do something similar to what he did against a very high-level grappler in Gamrot, okay? I think Gamrot's a step above Moicano in that field, and you saw what he just did recently in his last win. So I do like Beneil Dariush to get his hand raised here. And let's take a look at the betting line and see where this line's going. Dariush opened up as a plus 185. It touched my plus 150. Okay, so it came down. People were in agreement with what I'm talking about. It was trending that way, and then somehow goes back up to a plus 180. And you know, Moicano, he lives in our world. So, maybe it's some of his boys backing him. I don't know. I mean, you take a look where this line is at right now. on BetUS. Moicano is a minus 220. That line has me scratching my head. I think the value is without a doubt on Beneil Dariush at plus 180. The value's on him, and I think he wins this fight straight up. Okay, so if there was no betting lines going on and I'm at the bar and I'm chilling with somebody and they said, hey, you want to bet on this fight? You want to bet a beer? If I didn't know the line, or if I just was going off breaking down tape and knowing what I know about these fighters, I would back Dariush. Okay, so that definitely says I think the value's on Dariush, and I'll say this fight goes to a decision. Moicano's tough as nails, but I'll say Dariush gets his hand raised at the end of the day. Without a doubt, one of my most anticipated fights of the year, I would say, let alone this card. I mean, this is a fight that really stands out to me. I mean, first off, anytime Yuri Prochazka is in the octagon, it's must see. I mean, he's just built differently, win or lose. Jamal Hill, he's coming off that wildly entertaining loss against Alex Pereira, and he's really becoming a figure in the sport inside and outside the cage, right? He's got his YouTube channel going on, and he's a fighter that's intertwined some of my content here from the channel inside of his Instagram posts. He was kind of poking fun at some fights that I picked incorrectly of him. He called them milk takes, like they didn't age well, but make no mistake, I've also picked against him correctly. And, I want to say, I say this just having some fun. I actually kind of like the energy that he brings to the game. Actually, he's starting to grow on me. He's a tenacious dude. I mean, he lives and breathes this fight game, like we talked about. I mean, he's either in the cage scrapping, either knocking you out or going out on his shield, refusing to tap even when his arm's dangling around like a chicken wing. And then when he's outside the cage, he's still living and breathing this fight game. So you got to respect him there. Now, Yuri Prochazka, you got to respect him in a similar sense too. I mean, this is an absolute warrior. He's willing to go out on his shield. The thing with Prochazka, I would say, the thing that disappoints me so much, I think he has so much potential and brings in so many intangibles to the cage, but his striking defense is horrendous, and we see him get hit with big shots left and right. Of course, Alex Pereira capitalized on that once again in their last fight, as Alex Pereira knocks out both these men as of recently. But even in the Alexander Rakic fight, that was a fight where he took a ton of damage once again, but he was able to weather the storm, push through it, and eventually break Rakic down and get his own finish. And we've seen him do that throughout the years. But I don't think that that's a healthy way to live in the light heavyweight division. It's just not, okay? You cannot, especially the older you get too. He's only 32, still has his prime years, although I would say his 32 is a little taxed because he has a lot of mileage on him from some of the damage he's taken and for some of the damage he's going to continue to take. Okay, his 35 may not be a normal 35. He's a fighter that probably won't be fighting towards his late 30s, in my opinion, or at least not thriving in the UFC. I could see him starting to take a lot of KO losses, and he'll still get his fair share of victories, but we could see him kind of go the Johnny Walker route. It's possible. I hope that's not the case, but Jamal Hill will have the potential to knock him out. Jamal Hill's hands are nasty. We've seen him go in there and knock out high-level fighters like Thiago Santos, Johnny Walker, even though he's defensively vulnerable, but maybe he could replicate what he did to Walker in this fight here. Knocked out Jimmy Crute, got the finish over OSP, and he's just a solid athlete. He may not look like it. He's not like a super chiseled dude, but he moves well. He's fluid with his movement. He's a natural athlete, especially for this division, and his hands are good, and he's maturing as a fighter. He's been outside the cage for quite some time, though. I'm kind of wondering where he's at mentally going into this fight. I hope that he's not looking to do too much in there. And, if he doesn't get that early KO, he may get frustrated and he may get sucked into a tunnel that he doesn't want to be rolling around in, because that's what Yuri Prochazka is, man. He's a tornado, and I could easily see Prochazka just breaking Hill down in the late second or third round and getting his own finish. I think there'll be a very high pace to this fight based on the way both men hold themselves. They're going to go out there and they're going to clash. I think that could favor Prochazka as long as he doesn't get KO'd early, and I think you guys know where I'm going with this. I ain't picking Hill. I tipped the hat a little bit to him early on in this segment, but I'm taking Prochazka, one of my favorite fighters in the game, and I just think that it's very realistic he can go out there and break Hill down. Hill's been a little bit absent from the fight game, and I'm just wondering where he's at mentally after the way that last fight played out with Pereira. Okay, he got hurt in that fight as well, so we'll see where his chin's at, and I could see him getting knocked out. And I will say this though, Hill, if you're watching, you can clip this up and put it on your IG. But as we got big things rolling with this channel, you guys know this year this channel is going to take off. I hope to do some content with Hill down the line, and we'll see. Maybe he wants nothing to do with me. But I'm not picking you again, sweet dreams there. So this line is set at dead even odds right now. It's at -115 on BetUS. This fight is straight up pick'em. Who are you guys siding with? Comment below. I want to know who you guys are siding with. We take a look over at BetUS. It's -115, -115. And I will side with Prochazka. I'm going to say he gets a second or third round TKO. He's going to get a stoppage. It's going to be wild, and we're going to be going crazy as we're watching that one. But don't be surprised if Hill gets the early KO. That's how Hill gets the job done, in my opinion. He gets that early KO as Prochazka's hands are low, and he's just a little bit too vulnerable to eat something big. But we'll see. I cannot wait for that one. Got gold on the line. Merab Dvalishvili taking out Umar Nurmagomedov. Umar, I mean, you guys have been hearing me rave about this kid. I think that, not even a kid now, 29 years old. It's crazy. He's creeping up to the 30 marker. He's maturing as a fighter, but you guys been hearing me rave about him for years. I think that all the hype and all the talk about him is legitimate. I love the fact that he's a high-level striker. Okay, he comes from the Dagestani crew. He's a cousin of Khabib's. And although recently we've been seeing more of them showcase their striking, I mean, Islam Makhachev's going in there and head kicking dudes, but of course it's their grappling that everyone fears so much. But he's a fighter right off the rip, showcased to be a high-level striker. That's really his bread and butter. He's light on his feet. He has a great kicking game, but he can grapple as well. He can sub you. He can wrestle you. He could do it all. And the victory he's coming off is one I hold in high regard. So you could say that he's not really proven. I hear some of you guys talking about that. He hasn't really fought the high-level fighters. He's not really proven thus far to be as much of a favorite as he is against Merab. But here's the thing. That victory that he had over Corey Sandhagen was extremely high level. I think that Corey Sandhagen is one of the top fighters in the world. And although he's coming off that loss, I mean, it's just due to the fact of two extremely high-level fighters squaring off with each other. In fact, I would say right now, you give me Corey Sandhagen and Merab, and I don't know where I'm going to go with my pick on that. I think I might be siding with Corey. His wrestling and grappling has came around so well. His striking is really technical and diverse. And that was a puzzle that Nurmagomedov solved, okay? And I think, without being too long-winded, especially for those of you guys that follow me on IG at MMA Fortune Teller _, you guys have been hearing me convincingly say that Nurmagomedov is going to handle this fight, okay? And you guys know exactly how he's going to do it. He's not going to be consistently taken down. If Merab even gets a couple of takedowns, I would be surprised, but let's give him those couple of takedowns. He's not going to hold Nurmagomedov down, and it's going to wear on his gas tank a little bit. Even though Merab has one of the best gas tanks we've ever seen, it'll still deflate him a little bit. And I think that Merab is going to be vulnerable to being countered with the sub as he continuously presses with those takedowns. And I kind of see that the fight going that route because he's not going to like the striking exchanges. Nurmagomedov is the better striker. You saw how Merab looked against Sean O'Malley, even in that 5th round, which it's hard to talk about that fight in a negative way because I was going crazy when we hit that. That was another underdog play that we hit. That was a free official play I posted here on the channel. I was going nuts when we hit Merab there, and Merab has came through for me a lot. And I don't want to completely overlook some of the performances he's had leading up to even the O'Malley fight. The Cejudo fight was ridiculous. He was ragdolling Cejudo, who Cejudo has a big fight coming up. If you guys didn't hear, just we'll quickly mention he's going to be the headliner of that Seattle card against Song Yadong. But he was ragdolling the gold medalist and Cejudo. He was ragdolling Petr Yan, who after that fight we saw that it wasn't like he didn't have nothing left to give the fight game. I mean, Yan's looking better than ever, so that performance really stands out. He's been in there ragdolling everybody, but Nurmagomedov, in my opinion, will not be ragdolled by Dvalishvili, and he will get the better of the striking, and he will get the better of the jiu-jitsu scrambles and all that. 5-round fight. This is a perfect fight for Nurmagomedov to go out there and defeat a household name, a very respected name, as he becomes a champion of the world and then goes on a crazy title run, because that's what's going to happen. I think Nurmagomedov is going to hold this belt for a long time, and we're going to see another one of those staple champions like we've seen back in the day, right? I'm trying to think who's doing that these days. Comment below if I'm missing somebody. But when I'm talking about those types of fighters like George St. Pierre, Anderson Silva, maybe Israel Adesanya, Kamaru Usman. They've done that as of recently, but a reigning champ, a champion that's been doing it for quite some time. I guess Pantoja is doing that right now. But I see Nurmagomedov really holding this belt for some time and being one of the most respected fighters that we've ever seen when it's all said and done. I really stand behind that. So let's take a look at the betting line. He opened up as a minus 280. He's now a minus 350. So his line is getting steamed even as high as it opened up. And I don't think it really opened up that high, but some of you guys do. I've been talking to some of you guys, and people feel that Merab is being disrespected. He's the proven champ, and people feel like the line's a little weird in that sense. I don't. I completely understand why the line is what it is, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see Umar be a minus 400 something by the time that bell rings, okay? So not only does he win the fight and become the bantamweight champion of the world, I think he gets a finish. I'm going to say he gets a submission. Wouldn't be shocked if the KO happens either. If I have to pick one, I'll go sub. He's going to get a finish, though. Then we got the main event. We have a rematch between Arman Tsarukyan and Islam Makhachev. This fight, to me, may be the highest level lightweight bout that we've ever seen. Comment below. Give me your highest level of competition in a lightweight bout. I think this is probably it. Arman Tsarukyan made his UFC debut on short notice at just 22 years old. He took on Islam Makhachev, and it was one of the most closely contested matches that we've ever seen Makhachev participated in. You erase the hiccup knockout loss that he took back in the day against the Brazilian jiu-jitsu player. Somehow he landed that strike on him. You erase that, and the most competitive fight's probably going to be the Arman Tsarukyan fight, or of course, the Alexander Volkanovski fight the first time around. But besides that, we've seen Makhachev just go out there and dominate. Look at the shape that Tsarukyan is coming into this fight in. It's crazy. He is looking like an absolute specimen. You see him getting work over there in Coconut Creek at American Top Team. I mean, look at the shape this dude's coming in. You have to note it. I've been paying attention to this leading up to this fight. I know he's hungry for redemption. Now, of course, after Tsarukyan took that loss in his UFC debut at just 22 years old, took that fight on short notice against Makhachev, he goes on, and I believe never loses a fight in the UFC since. Of course, technically he loses to Mateusz Gamrot. That was a 5-round war. I thought that Tsarukyan clearly did enough to take that fight. It was close, but I thought he clearly took 3 rounds. It was very disappointing. But I take that fight as a win. And since that loss to Makhachev, he would then be on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 fight winning streak leading up to this rematch. Okay, now he's 28 years old. He's much more physically mature, has a lot more fight experience. I mean, you look at the writing on the wall, and this is a fight that should play out very closely. And that's even with noting that Islam Makhachev is probably the number 2, or depending if you have him number 1, is the pound-for-pound fighter in the game, and just looks great in rematches. We saw him in the rematch with Volkanovski. He goes out there after the first fight's very competitive. Then he just knocks Volkanovski out in brutal fashion in the first round. Then he goes out there. He subs Dustin Poirier. I mean, Makhachev, I don't think you guys even need to or want to hear me rave about him. You guys know that I know he's extremely high level. And him and his group of training partners and you can even call them family, right? Those group of men that are family, they are built differently. They take the fight game, they look at the fight game differently. It's a way of life. They don't party. They don't do other things. They just live and breathe this stuff, and that carries a lot of weight, and that's why they go out there and all they do is win. When you take a look at the resume, the record of Khabib, Islam, Umar, all those guys, even the other relative over there in the PFL, I mean, all these guys from Bellator, all they do is win. They just do not lose, okay? And you have to respect that. Okay, and that's a big part of the reason why I was likely going to pick Islam to win this fight without even dissecting this fight from a stylistic matchup and just breaking down this fight, how it's going to play out. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but I'm not. I'm going to let you guys know right now. I'm going to pick Arman Tsarukyan, and I'm making my mind up on that right now as I'm filming this. I was going to side with Islam, but I'm not. I'm going to take Arman Tsarukyan. I think this fight's going to play out very closely. I love the fact that he's going to have the hunger to get redemption here. And I was rewatching that first fight. It was so competitive, and Arman Tsarukyan's just a different animal. Yeah, you could say that Islam was probably just kind of cruising through that fight, and he was probably not taking Tsarukyan as serious, as he was just this youngster making his debut, and he was kind of just floating around in those scrambles. But boy, man, Arman was right there with him, man, and he's grown so much. And I just can see Arman doing something very similar, but if not better, than what Volkanovski did in that first fight, which Volkanovski, a much smaller fighter than what Tsarukyan is, especially going in this fight, man. It looks like he beasted up for this fight. I could see Tsarukyan doing something very similar to what what Volkanovski did to Makhachev in that first fight. Okay, his gas tank's going to be phenomenal, and I think he could kind of get the better of some of those later rounds. I don't say it with a lot of confidence, but as we get to the betting line, I think that's where the value is. At the very least, that's definitely where the value is. Arman Tsarukyan's at plus 300 underdog. He opened up as a plus 225. A lot of action coming in on Makhachev. Tsarukyan pushes through adversity. We saw it in the Charles Oliveira fight. He never looks for a way out. He's going to bring this fight to Islam. Whoever's will is more. Whoever digs deeper in those later rounds is going to take this fight. And just rewatch that Volkanovski fight, the first one with Islam. That was debatable which way the decision should have went. It was a close fight. I think Tsarukyan right now is a better version of who Volkanovski was then. Is Islam a better version of who he was then? Islam's still just 33 years old. He's getting better and better, and his crew took this fight extremely serious. So it's a great fight. But I am going to sit here on the mic, and I'm going to tell you that Arman Tsarukyan wins this fight via split decision. That's going to be my pick there. And you take a look at the line right now. He's a plus 300 on BetUS. Go head over to BetUS, lock that in. That's your main event pick. We're taking the dog out for a walk. That's going to wrap this one up. This one was fun. I really enjoyed being on the mic, and I want to give a special shout out to everyone that stood with me throughout this video. Hopefully you guys found this insightful and useful. I appreciate you guys so much. If you did, let me know by hitting that like button, subscribing to the channel, go follow me on my social media. I'll know you guys like what I'm putting out here for you guys. I've been putting in a lot of work on tape and a lot of work into the production. And I appreciate you guys very much. Got to leave you with some parting words, especially on a big card like this. I'll use this time to say this, especially for you youngsters out there. Just note this. If any of you guys are living your life where you kind of have a lot of hate in your heart and disdain to the world just because maybe some things didn't go your way early on in your life, just note this. I promise you guys, when you go out and you live that type of lifestyle where you look at the world like it owes you something, or you look at the world like you have hatred for everyone around you, you feel like it's everyone else is responsible for some of the pain maybe that you endured, I'll tell you what, you will regret it if you go out and you live a lifestyle where you put that negativity on other people, you do things that aren't the right thing to do. You hurt people in a variety of ways, however you want to take that. You can hurt people in a lot of different ways, not just physically, but emotionally and whatever it could be, taking things from them, doing different types of things. As you get older, I promise you, you will get more wisdom and you will regret a lot of those things, and you'll live with that regret. I guarantee you, even the most coldest dudes listen to this right now. Okay. Cause I don't know. I used to look at if I'm being honest, when I was younger, I feel like I was a cold dude. I was a lot colder than a lot of the people that I surrounded myself with. And some of them were even cold, but I kind of had a little something. And I don't mean cold like I'm a badass. I'm talking about cold like I never thought some of the things I would do, I would ever look back and have regret or whatnot. So the older you get wisdom, your mind kind of slows down. You see the world in a deeper sense with your life experience. You look at things more deep, and you will regret doing some of those things. So think about that the next time you're about to do something that's wrong. Remember that. I'm telling you, you're going to hurt yourself because you're going to be thinking about that. And whether or not you believe in karma, that's a whole nother thing. I'm not going to go there, but I don't know. Life can be interesting sometimes. So think about that, guys. And I hope you guys all have a great week. I'm going to have a lot of content coming your guys' way. We got the huge card taking place this Saturday. I'm excited about it. And I'm going to have all types of content coming up here for you guys. So if you want to see more, like this video, show me you like this stuff. Appreciate you guys more than you know. Signing out. Teller.
The teller.